Have you ever seen a doll that gave you the creeps? There's something strange about dolls, isn't there? Those glassy eyes that seem to follow you everywhere. Or the feeling that you're not entirely alone. Now imagine finding a Christmas doll, a beautiful gift that appears innocent, but behind it lies a dark secret. In a small town surrounded by snow during the Christmas season, Amy was shopping for Christmas gifts in the market in the old town when she came across a strange little shop with a sign that barely read, "Memories of the Past." The shop seemed almost deserted. Amy, a young woman who loves the Christmas spirit, decided to explore this mysterious place. Curiosity drove her inside. Inside, I found a small doll dressed in traditional Christmas clothing. The doll was elegant, but the shiny glass eyes gave an eerie feeling that she was watching. It made her heart pound uncomfortably. Amy decided to buy the doll as an extra decoration for her home. When I got it home, I put it on a shelf next to the Christmas tree. It matched the festive decorations perfectly. But the doll had a secret. When Amy brought the doll home, she had no idea it would change her life forever. It all started. The first night, Amy began to feel something strange. She woke up in the middle of the night to a faint, whispering sound from the living room. When she got there, she noticed that the doll was moving. It was on the table, while she had left it on the shelf. She felt anxious but thought she had forgotten where she was. And sometimes she felt her glass eyes glow in the dark. This was just the beginning. The next night, everything started to take a terrifying turn. The mirrors in the house began to cast inexplicable shadows, and the lights started to flicker unnaturally. A child once said, "You are my mother now." Amy tried to ignore it, but fear took over. So a few days later, she noticed the doll had moved when she turned her back. The strange movements didn't stop there. Amy began to hear voices at night, the sound of children laughing and soft knocking on the house's doors. One night, as she was getting ready for bed, she heard a clear voice say, "You are my mother now." At first, she thought she was imagining it, but she wasn't the only one who felt that way. Her neighbor, Mrs. Martha, reported seeing a strange light in Amy's window at night and a little girl running into the house. She decided to investigate the doll's origins and learned from the townspeople that the shop where she had bought the doll had been closed for years and that the doll belonged to a child who had tragically died on Christmas Day decades ago. The doll was cursed and carried the child's spirit within it, searching for a family who would love her. One night, Amy decided to throw the doll away. I took her to the nearby woods and dug a deep hole to bury her. As she did so, she felt something grab her shoulder. She quickly turned around, but found nothing. After burying the doll, she went home thinking it was all over. But when she entered the living room, she saw the doll sitting on the couch, facing her. The following day, Amy was gone entirely. Neighbors entered the house and found a handwritten note. "I have accepted to be a mother forever." The doll was sitting next to the note. This doll has become a staple in the town's folklore. Some people hear strange noises near Amy's abandoned house at night, while others report seeing the doll in various places. The real question: was the doll possessed, or had Amy lost her mind? Winter had settled deep in the mountains where the Miller family's cabin was. They had decided to spend their Christmas vacation in the remote cabin in the woods. The cabin, which looked like it had been taken from an old oil painting, was covered in a thick layer of snow, while the lights from the fireplace streamed through the small glass windows, giving the illusion of warmth to the cold outside. The family gathered around the Christmas tree, chatting and laughing as they opened their Christmas presents, forgetting the isolation imposed by the harsh nature. George Miller Sr. was contemplating the snow covering the tree in front of the house when the silence of the night was interrupted by a sudden knock on the door. Everyone turned in surprise, as no one was supposed to visit them in this remote place. George stood up carefully and walked to the door. He opened it slowly, only to find himself in a terrifying void, except for strange footprints etched into the snow. The footprints were random and irregular, as if they belonged to a creature that crawled rather than walked. George felt a twinge of anxiety, but he decided to ignore it and closed the door. As time passed, things began to escalate. The lights flickered unnaturally, and faint whispers began to creep between the walls of the cabin. Lisa, the youngest daughter, whispered to her mother that she saw strange shadows moving outside. Her mother tried to reassure her, but she felt a creeping fear creeping in. Later that night, George noticed a dark shadow moving near the Christmas tree outside the bedroom window. He took a flashlight and went outside to investigate, but found nothing but bitter cold and strange footprints that were getting closer and closer to the cabin. As midnight approached, the power suddenly went out, plunging the cabin into darkness. The voices that had been whispers turned into muffled screams coming from the surrounding woods. Everyone sat huddled around the fireplace, trying to find some fragile safety. They wondered who these voices were and what they were from. Suddenly, Lisa shouted, "There's a face watching me through the window." George ran to the window, but found nothing. At that moment, a tremendous crash resounded on the roof of the cabin, as if something huge had fallen on it. With reluctant courage, George climbed the ladder to the roof, armed with his flashlight and his old rifle. The wind howled and the cold pierced his bones. When he reached the roof, he found nothing but glowing footprints, as if etched with fire. They led him to the edge of the roof, where he found a message carved into the wood. "Not yet. I'll be back." At that moment, George heard his family screaming from inside the cabin. He rushed back quickly, finding Lisa and Sam hiding under the table, while Christina pointed to the fireplace. The fire had gone out, and in its place a thick shadow rose, as if watching them. The shadow suddenly moved, approaching George. George raised his gun and fired, but the bullet passed through without leaving a trace. George was horrified by the situation. "This is unbelievable," he said. "We have to get out of here now." The family gathered what they could and walked through the snow to their car. When they looked back at the cabin one last time, they noticed that the Christmas tree inside was still burning, even though the electricity had not been restored. From within the fire, a mysterious figure emerged, standing silently watching them. The family left the cabin and never returned. But to this day, George remembers that night like a bad dream. He can't explain what happened, but he does know one thing. Whatever visited them that night, it wasn't human. The note he left behind still haunts him. "Not yet. I'll be back."